The phone rang at exactly 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I should have known from the way it cut through the silence of my little apartment that everything was about to change forever. "Mom, tell me you didn't give that bourbon whiskey to Laura. Please tell me you didn't." My daughter Blessing's voice came through the speaker like a wounded animal, desperate and raw in a way I hadn't heard since she was a child. I set down my teacup, confused. "Honey, what's wrong?" Laura loved it. She said it was the best gift she'd received in years. She drank it right there in my kitchen and... "Oh God, Mom, you don't understand what you've done." The sobbing that followed wasn't the controlled crying of a 45-year-old successful marketing executive. This was primal, the kind of grief that comes from losing something you can never get back. I stared at my reflection in the window, watching my own face change from confusion to something else entirely. You see, at 72 years old, you develop a sixth sense about family secrets. You start to notice the silences, the quick glances, the conversations that stop when you walk into a room. "Blessing, sweetheart, it was just a bottle of bourbon whiskey, the one you sent me for my birthday last month." The silence that followed lasted exactly 14 seconds. I counted them. And in those 14 seconds, I realized that my daughter, my own flesh and blood, had been lying to me about something so big that it made her scream like the world was ending. If you think you know where this story is going, trust me, you don't. And if you've ever felt like your own family was keeping secrets from you, make sure to subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you look at the people closest to you forever. But here's what I need to know from you right now, before I continue. Have you ever had that moment when you realized someone you trusted completely had been lying to your face? Tell me in the comments, because after hearing what I'm about to share, you'll understand why that phone call was just the beginning of the most shocking revelation of my entire life. Let me tell you how a simple bottle of bourbon whiskey revealed the truth about my family, and how it changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the daughter I raised with my own two hands. To understand why that phone call shattered me, you need to know what I sacrificed for the woman who was now sobbing on the other end of the line. My name is Elizabeth Frost, and I was 27 when my husband Dave died. One moment he was kissing me goodbye on his way to work. The next moment, 2 police officers were standing at my door with those terrible words that change everything. "Ma'am, there's been an accident." Blessing was only 2 years old, still calling for her daddy every night, and suddenly I was drowning in a world I never prepared for. The life insurance barely covered the funeral. I had exactly $342 in our savings account and a toddler who needed everything. So I did what mothers do. I became 3 people at once. Monday through Friday, I cleaned hospital floors from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., my knees raw from scrubbing, my hands cracked from the chemicals. Weekends, I babysat other people's children, while Blessing played alongside them, never knowing that Mommy was getting paid to love someone else's kids because we needed every dollar. And in the evenings, after Blessing fell asleep, I hunched over my sewing machine, hemming dresses, and taking in alterations until my eyes burned. I had been accepted to nursing school before Dave died. The acceptance letter was still pinned to our refrigerator when the accident happened. I never threw it away, but I never opened it again either. Blessing's future mattered more than mine ever could. 23 years of this. 23 years of putting every dream I ever had into a box so that my daughter could have hers. And it worked. God, it worked beautifully. Blessing graduated valedictorian, got her MBA, landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm. When she married Robert, I cried tears of joy because my baby had everything I never did. Security, respect, a beautiful home. I thought I was welcome in that beautiful home. When Tyler and Rita were born, I moved to a tiny apartment just 12 minutes away. Not because I wanted to leave my little house with Dave's garden, but because Blessing said they needed help with the children. "Mom, you're so good with kids," she'd say. "The babies need their grandmother close by." So I became the live-in babysitter who lived out. I was there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every school pickup, when Blessing and Robert were too busy building their empire. Laura, Robert's mother, would sweep in for the photo opportunities, the birthdays, the Christmas mornings, the school plays. But I was there for the unglamorous moments, the fever nights, the homework battles, the tears over first crushes. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It started small. So small I convinced myself I was imagining it. After Blessing's promotion to senior director, she started talking differently to me. "Mom, could you just handle the dishes tonight? I have calls to make." Not "would you mind helping?" Not "thank you for cooking dinner for my family again." Just expectations. Commands. Laura got bolder too. "Elizabeth, can you clean up? The real guests are coming." She said one Thanksgiving, her voice dripping with that particular kind of cruelty that comes wrapped in a smile. I was stirring the gravy I'd been making since 5 a.m., wearing the same apron I'd worn to cook for their family for 8 years. And suddenly, I was the help clearing out before the important people arrived. The family photos hurt the most. Oh, they always had a reason. "Mom, you're still in your cooking clothes." "Elizabeth, could you take this one of just the immediate family?" "Grandma, we need a few shots for Robert's work newsletter, you understand." I understood, all right. I understood that the woman who raised their mother, who loved their children like they were my own heartbeat, wasn't good enough to be in the pictures that would hang on their walls. "Mom, you're embarrassing us with your old-fashioned ways," Blessing said one evening after I'd suggested we say grace before dinner. Old-fashioned. The woman who worked 3 jobs to put her through college was now an embarrassment. But I kept giving. I couldn't help myself. When Tyler wanted guitar lessons, I saved for 3 months to surprise him. When Rita needed a dress for her school dance, I spent a week's grocery money to make sure she had the prettiest one there. I cooked for every family gathering, showed up early, stayed late, and smiled while they treated me like furniture that occasionally made helpful noises. The final blow came on a Sunday in March. Blessing called me over, her voice unusually bright. "Mom, we have exciting news." She and Robert were moving to California. His company was transferring him. Big promotion, huge opportunity. "What about me?" I asked, the words falling out before I could stop them. The pause was long enough for me to hear my own heart beat. "Well, Mom, the thing is, the new house isn't really set up for, we won't have space for, maybe it's time you found your own place. Something smaller, more appropriate." More appropriate. 45 years after David died, 23 years after I put my dreams in a box, I was being dismissed like an employee whose services were no longer required. They moved in June. I helped them pack. My 72nd birthday fell on a Thursday. I know because I circled it on my calendar 3 weeks beforehand, hoping maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year, Blessing would remember without me having to remind her. I sat in my little apartment that morning, looking at my phone, willing it to ring. By noon, convinced myself she was planning a surprise. By 3 o'clock, I was making excuses for her. By 6, I was crying into a cup of tea. The doorbell rang at 7:43 p.m. A delivery driver stood there with a single bottle of bourbon whiskey and a note that read, "Happy birthday, Mom," Blessing in handwriting that definitely wasn't hers. 1 bottle of bourbon whiskey. For the woman who had given up everything for her daughter's dreams. But you know what? I smiled. I actually smiled as I signed for that package because at least she remembered. At least somewhere in her busy, important life, there was a moment where she thought of her mother. I called her immediately. "Thank you for the bourbon whiskey, sweetheart. It was so thoughtful." "Yeah, whatever, Mom. I'm busy." The line went dead before I could say I loved her. I held that bottle for a long time that night. It was beautiful, actually, vintage looking with an unusual shape, heavier than normal bottles. I thought maybe she'd found it at some specialty shop, spent a little extra to make it special. I put it in my refrigerator and promised myself I'd save it for a day when I really needed cheering up. That day never seemed to come, so the bottle just sat there. 3 months later, loneliness drove me to start volunteering at Eleanor's Antique Emporium downtown. I needed to be around people, around stories, around things that had lived long enough to matter. Eleanor was 78, sharp as a tack, and had been running that shop for 40 years. "You've got the eye," she told me after my first week, watching me spot a valuable piece of depression glass that a customer had overlooked. Most people see old junk. You see history. Eleanor became the mentor I never knew I needed. She taught me about maker's marks, about the stories hidden in scratches and chips, about how the most valuable things are often the ones people overlook. Under her guidance, I started developing an eye for treasures hiding in plain sight. Within 6 months, I was buying pieces at estate sales and reselling them online. Nothing huge, but enough to pay for my groceries and put a little away. For the first time since David died, I was earning money doing something I loved instead of just surviving. I was becoming someone again. Not just Blessing's mother, not just Tyler and Rita's grandmother, not just the woman who used to clean hospitals. I was Elizabeth, and Elizabeth had value beyond what she could give to other people. If you're watching this and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that subscribe button, because what happened next will show you exactly how much power we have when we finally see our own worth. One afternoon in December, Laura knocked on my door. This was unprecedented. Laura had never voluntarily spent time in my little apartment, as she called it. But there she was, all smiles and small talk, complimenting my Christmas decorations. "Can I offer you some tea? Or?" I remembered the bourbon whiskey, still sitting untouched in my refrigerator. "I have this special bourbon whiskey that Blessing gave me for my birthday. I've been saving it." The moment Laura saw that bottle, her entire demeanor changed. Her eyes went wide, then calculating, then hungry. "Blessing probably thought it was just a regular bourbon whiskey," I said, handing it to her, "but you seem to appreciate nice things." Laura took that bottle like it was made of gold. She examined every inch of it, turning it over in her hands with the kind of reverence I'd learned to recognize in Eleanor's shop. This was the look of someone who knew exactly what they were holding. "Oh, Elizabeth, you're so generous. Are you sure you don't mind?" But she was already opening it, already tilting it back, drinking it down like she was afraid I might change my mind. "This is amazing, Elizabeth. Where did Blessing get this?" The praise was effusive, almost frantic. "It was a birthday gift," I said simply, studying her face. Something was happening here, something I didn't understand yet, but my years at Eleanor's shop had taught me to trust my instincts when something didn't feel right. Laura drained every drop, complimented it 3 more times, and left 20 minutes later with a strange expression I couldn't quite read. 4 hours later, my phone rang. "Mom, tell me you didn't give that bourbon whiskey to Laura. Please tell me you didn't." And now we're back to where we started, except now you know why Blessing's voice sounded like her world was ending. "Honey, what's wrong?" "Laura loved it. She said it was the best gift." "Oh God, Mom, you don't understand what you've done. That wasn't just any bourbon whiskey." My heart started racing. "What do you mean, honey?" What came next broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break anymore. "Mom, that bottle, it was worth $250,000. I sat down hard on my kitchen chair. "What?" It was a 1915 bourbon whiskey prototype bottle from Dad's collection. I found it in the basement when I was cleaning out storage. I needed. Her voice broke completely. I was going to sell it. The room started spinning. Dave's collection, the one he'd been so proud of, the one he'd shown me piece by piece during our early marriage, the one I'd carefully packed away after he died, because Blessing said she wanted to keep it safe. "You were going to sell your father's collection?" "Not all of it. Just this one piece. I needed the money for something important. I gave it to you to get it out of the house temporarily. I was going to come back for it in a few weeks and tell you it was dangerous to keep around the grandkids or something." "Blessing," I said slowly, "you gave me a $250,000 bottle as a throwaway birthday gift, planning to steal it back later?" The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and broken. "I'm having an affair, Mom. With my boss. Robert doesn't know, but I need money to start over, to leave him." The bottle was my way out. My daughter, my beautiful, successful daughter who I'd sacrificed everything for, was planning to steal from her own mother to fund an affair. And now that bottle was sitting in Laura's stomach, completely gone forever. The silence on that phone call wasn't just quiet. It was the sound of everything I thought I knew about my daughter, crumbling into dust. So let me understand this, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You gave me a priceless family heirloom as a throwaway birthday gift, planning to manipulate me into giving it back later. I was going to take it back and tell you it was dangerous to keep around Tyler and Rita, or that it was fragile, or... Blessing's voice trailed off as she realized how it sounded. So you were planning to steal from your own mother. It's not stealing. The defensive anger in her voice was sharp, familiar. It was the same tone she'd used as a teenager when caught in lies. It's technically Dad's collection, so it's mine anyway. You never even looked at those bottles after he died. Something cold settled in my chest. After 45 years of putting her needs before mine, after sacrificing my education, my dreams, my entire identity to give her everything, she was claiming ownership of the one thing I had left of David. Blessing, I said quietly. I've learned quite a bit about antiques and collectibles these past few months. What do you mean? I mean, I knew that bottle was special the moment I saw it. The sharp intake of breath on the other end told me everything. You knew? Eleanor taught me well. A 1915 prototype bourbon whiskey bottle has a very distinctive shape, a particular weight, specific markings that are unmistakable once you know what to look for. Did you really think after 6 months of working with antiques that I wouldn't recognize something that valuable? Then why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see what kind of person my daughter had become. And when Laura came to visit me, which she'd never done before, by the way, I wanted to see what kind of person she was too. I could hear Blessing's breathing change, becoming rapid and shallow. What are you saying? I'm saying Laura recognized that bottle the second she saw it. Her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. She knew exactly what she was drinking, Blessing. She knew it was worth a fortune, and she drank it anyway because she thought she was stealing it from a foolish old woman who didn't know any better. Oh my God. Your mother-in-law consumed a $250,000 artifact right in front of me, knowing full well what it was, because she thought I was too stupid to realize its value. The sobbing that came through the phone then wasn't grief over the lost money anymore. It was the sound of someone realizing that the people closest to them were capable of betrayals they'd never imagined. But I wasn't finished. Blessing, there's something else you need to know. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. I switched the bottles. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. The bottle I gave to Laura was a regular vintage bourbon whiskey bottle I bought at an estate sale for $20. It looks similar enough to fool someone who's being greedy and not paying close attention. The real 1915 prototype bottle, your father's bottle, is sitting safely in my bedroom closet. You. What? I wanted to test both of you, Blessing. I wanted to see if my daughter would try to manipulate me, and I wanted to see if your mother-in-law would try to take advantage of me. You both failed spectacularly. The sound that came through the phone wasn't words, it was the noise a person makes when their entire worldview collapses. I've made a decision, I continued. I'm selling the real bottle. Mom, you can't. That's Dad's collection, it's family history, it's mine now, and I'm using that money to enroll in art school. Art school? She sounded genuinely confused, as if the idea that I might have dreams and ambitions was completely foreign to her. Something I always wanted to do. Something I gave up when your father died, so I could raise you. I'm 72 years old, Blessing, and I'm finally going to paint. Mom, please. I made a mistake. I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. We can work this out. I'll leave Robert properly. I'll get a divorce lawyer. You'll what? Continue to treat me like hired help? Continue to exclude me from family photos? Continue to let your mother-in-law insult me in my own daughter's house? The truth was flowing out of me now like water from a broken dam. 45 years of swallowed hurts and silent sacrifices pouring into the space between us. I gave you everything, Blessing. My youth, my education, my dreams, my entire life, and in return you gave me a fake birthday gift that you planned to steal back, while your mother-in-law drank what she thought was a fortune in vintage bourbon whiskey right in my kitchen. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't give me back the 45 years I spent believing that if I just loved you enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, you would value me. sorry doesn't change the fact that you were willing to steal from me to fund an affair. What can I do? How can I fix this? I looked around my little apartment, at the antiques I'd learned to love, at the art books Eleanor had given me, at the easel I'd already ordered online with money I'd earned from my own work. You can respect the fact that I'm not your emergency backup plan anymore. You can understand that I'm not the hired help. And you can learn to see me as a person who has value beyond what I can give you. Does this mean, is this over between us? The question hung in the air like smoke. 45 years of motherhood, of sacrifice, of unconditional love, balanced against the weight of betrayal and disrespect. No, sweetheart, but it means everything is different now. It means I'm Elizabeth first, and your mother second. And it means if you want a relationship with me, you're going to have to earn it. The bottle sits in my closet, wrapped carefully in tissue paper. But it's not Dave's collection anymore. And it's not Blessing's inheritance. It's my ticket to the life I should have had all along. Tomorrow I start art classes. At 72, I'm finally going to learn to paint. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my art studio. Yes, I said my art studio. With paint under my fingernails and sunlight streaming through windows I never thought I'd be able to afford. The bourbon whiskey bottle sold for exactly what Blessing said it would. $250,000. But you know what's funny? The money wasn't the most valuable thing I got from that transaction. What I got was something I'd been missing for 45 years. The knowledge that I matter. I'm holding a paintbrush for the first time since high school, and my hands remember what my heart never forgot. Color has a language of its own, and I'm finally fluent again. My instructor, Patricia, says I have a natural gift. At 72, I'm discovering talents I never knew I had because I never gave myself permission to try. Blessing and I talk now, but it's different. She calls every Sunday at 2 p.m., my time, not hers. She asks about my paintings, my classes, my life. She doesn't assume I'm available to babysit or cook or clean up after her family anymore. It took losing a $250,000 bottle for her to realize that her mother was worth more than the services she provided. Robert never found out about the affair. Blessing ended it, stayed in her marriage, and moved back from California. She says she's in therapy now, working on understanding how she became someone who could plan to steal from her own mother. I hope that's true. I hope she finds her way back to the little girl who used to tell me I was the best mommy in the world. Laura still doesn't know she drank a $20 vintage bourbon whiskey instead of a priceless artifact. Sometimes I wonder if I should tell her, but then I remember the greed in her eyes that day, the way she gulped down what she thought was my fortune, and I decide some lessons teach themselves. I've learned something profound in these past months. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. And demanding respect isn't asking too much. It's asking for the absolute minimum. For 45 years I believed that if I just loved enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, it would somehow be enough. But love without respect is just servitude with prettier words, and sacrifice without appreciation is just being taken advantage of by people who should know better. I want to show you something. This is my latest painting. I finished it yesterday. It's that bourbon whiskey bottle, the one that changed everything, but I've transformed it into something entirely new. The bottle is painted in soft watercolors, surrounded by light, and across the front in bold letters, I've written, "Worth more than money." Because that's what I learned from all of this. Sometimes the most valuable things aren't what people think they are. Everyone thought that bottle was about money. $250,000 sitting in someone's refrigerator. But it was never about the money. It was about discovering that a daughter's love should be priceless. But respect. Respect has to be earned. Even from your own children. Especially from your own children. Tell me in the comments, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned about standing up for yourself? Because at 72, I'm just getting started, and I want to hear about your journey too. The bottle is gone, transformed into art and dreams and a future I never thought I'd have. But what remains is something far more precious. The knowledge that Elizabeth, not somebody's mother, not somebody's servant, not somebody's backup plan, but Elizabeth herself, has always been worth more than money. And that, my friends, is a masterpiece you can't put a price on. If you've ever felt like you're giving everything to people who appreciate nothing, subscribe to this channel because your story matters too. And every story of someone finding their worth inspires another person to find theirs.